Catch you suckers at a bad time. Spoilers. Welcome to the channel, I'm Hayes. I'll talk movies all day, so subscribe right now if you want to be entertained. And today, I want to talk about Blade, because this film came out in 1998, and when it did, it blew minds. It was action-packed, violent, did not hold back at all. It really felt like the movie we didn't know we needed. And although everyone likes to credit Spider-Man and the X-Men movies for kicking off the whole comic book craze era, truth be told, they might not even exist if it wasn't for the success of Blade. If Blade flopped, we may never have gotten the epic multi-movie saga that was the MCU, and we may also never have gotten the DC extended universe, which, to be honest, probably could have done just fine without that. Furthermore, before Deadpool became the first R-rated comic book movie, Blade already did that. Before Black Panther became the first black superhero movie, Blade already did that too. And by the way, Blade wasn't the first R-rated or black superhero movie either, just points out that it was before those guys. But now it's 2020, a lot has changed in the world. Not all for the best, but people look at things differently now, so with that said, how well does Blade hold up? So here's how this works. I'm going to go through the movie, talk about what happens, and then at the end, I'll let you know what I think of it. Alright, now Blade starts off with a black woman dying in childbirth, and that's a whole topic right there. We then move to the present day, and there's a guy getting tricked into going to a vampire nightclub. He gets there, he gets pushed around, blood starts dripping from the sprinklers, and why does he taste it? I mean, maybe he didn't know it was blood, but do people just put random red liquids falling from the ceiling in their mouth? Is that a thing? I'm pretty sure we weren't doing that in 1998. But then again, this is set in Los Angeles, so that might be the answer to a lot of things in this movie, to be honest. Anyway, it turns out the vampires wanted to have him over for dinner, but before they can feast, Blade shows up to save the day. He slices, dices, shoots, boots, and kills all the vampires except Quinn. He gets stapled to the wall and set on fire, and then the scene ends with a black man running away from the cops, so pretty realistic really. And I guess this is the moment when Lem had decided to become a police officer. Now the next bit is in the hospital, and this is where we're introduced to Karen Jensen. Karen gets bitten by burnt Quinn, and then Blade comes to finish him off. Hold on a sec. Rewind. In the club, Blade said to Quinn, "Give my regards to Frost," as if he never intended on killing Quinn. But if he's coming to the hospital to finish him off, that means he did intend on killing Quinn, so why didn't he just kill Quinn when he had the super clear chance to? Why waste 2 pieces of silver on a guy you're not trying to kill when you're not exactly the March of Dimes? Anyway, the scene ends with a black man carrying a black woman running away from the cops while being shot at, so pretty realistic really. Blade takes Karen back to his secret hideout because she reminds him of his mother, even though he never actually knew his mother, and there's no way he'd have that memory of her. I mean, even if he has some super vampire brain, baby Blade wasn't actually looking at his mum. Anyway, to help with the vampire bites infection, Whistler injects Karen with garlic, which, to be honest, sounds like the type of thing that gets recommended in a nosy neighbours Facebook group. Oh, you got bit by a vampire, did ya? Have a little garlic. Clear that right up. Worked wonders on me nan. So the general plot of the movie is that you have this little runt of a vampire called Deacon Frost who doesn't want to hide from humans in shadows like all the old fart knocker vampires. So he sets up nightclubs and causes a ruckus, much to the dismay of the elders. But what Frost really wants to do is bring back La Magra, which despite how it sounds, isn't the Los Angeles branch of Make America Great Again. It's actually the ancient vampire blood god. Now in order to bring back Maggie, Frost first must translate the ancient text, something that even the elders don't bother with. And when he does, Frost finds out to bring back Mags, he needs to sacrifice 12 elder vamps and Blade. So now the hunter becomes the hunted. Except not really, Blade still hunts, so... Anyway, Karen teams up with Blade because she figured hanging with him is her best chance of survival, even though he just used that as bait to get to one of the vampire familiars. Those are people who want to become vampires so bad that they'll do anything. Kinda like the Hopefuls, and if you got that reference, put it in the comments. So the vampires sent their familiar to get Karen. Blade figured she's a likely target, so used her to get to him so he can then track down the vampire hideout, and this guy is her best chance of survival. Okay. The scene ends with a black man beating up a cop in public and no one, not even Karen, says anything about it, so yeah, that one was pretty unrealistic actually. So Blade and Karen find a vampire warehouse where they keep the pages from the Book of Erebus. Blade then beats up a child. Quinn and the other goons put a stop to it because hitting kids is not cool, man. And this is when we find out that Blade is a magician because that earpiece was not there before. Whistler shows up with guns and shoots up the place. They fight on the inside of a tube tunnel or subway tunnel since it's America. There's train's driving by at high speed and the gap between a train and a walkway keeps changing, which is further proof of Blade's magical abilities. The scene ends with a black man and a black woman stealing a train ride. They're just taking a piss at this point, really. Frost kidnapped Dragonetti at some point, I guess. They make him watch his first sunrise, also his last. Frost and his goons wear sunblock and leather biker suits so the sun doesn't kill them, which raises the questions, why weren't they doing that before? Or were they doing that before? And if so, does that mean vampires have a big stake in a sun cream business? See what I did there? Do they also run leather businesses as well? Does that mean when Blade buys leather goods, he's financially supporting his enemies? Furthermore, what do vegan vampires wear? Does PVC leather also work? But it turns out that leather isn't really needed because when Frost meets Blade in the streets, he's just using sunblock, which then raises the questions, how many cows needlessly died for that scene with Dragonetti? Did Peter contact New Line Cinema after this? Also, does Frost have to put sunblock in his hair as well? And what about his eyes? And what's the SPF factor and the star rating of this cream? Anyway, the scene ends with a black man saving an Asian girl from getting run over by a bus driver who wasn't paying attention after a white man threw the girl in front of the bus to cause a distraction for his own escape, so pretty realistic, really. So now we find out that vampires drink blood because their own blood can't sustain hemoglobin. And hold on a sec, rewind. If they can't sustain hemoglobin, that means vampires are anemic, and that means they have trouble getting boners and have a low sperm count. So, how was Dragonetti and the others born a vampire? Their parents would have had to have just killed someone to get enough hemoglobin right before doing the do. And Quinn in the nightclub would have just killed someone just so he can get a blowjob, which, actually, Anyway, Karen thinks she's found a cure for her vampirism, and that's when they're attacked by Frost and his goons. Karen gets taken, Whistler gets shot in the leg, beaten and bitten. Actually, he might have been referring to the cancer, but in any case, when Blade finds him, he tries to clean his wounds with a small tissue. You know, for someone called Blade, he doesn't seem to know how to deal with cuts. Anyway, the scene ends with a white man telling a black man to hand over his gun and walk away, so pretty realistic, really. So it turns out Frost doesn't just want to bring back Lamaggie, but also wants to turn everyone in the world to vampires. But if he did that, how would they feed? I'm not sure he thought this plan through, to be honest. Blade goes to rescue Karen. He fights some vampires, kills some vampires, but then sees his mother, who he thought was dead. Turns out she is, because, you know, vampires are still dead. By the way, if someone told me Sanaa Lathan was a real-life vampire, I'd believe them. This woman does not age, not even a little bit. Anyway, the scene ends with a black man getting beaten down while a white man tells him that he owns his mother. That was just painful, to be honest. Frost uses Blade and the Elders to resurrect Lamagra. Karen escapes and rescues Blade, who then sucks the blood out of her neck to regain his strength. Blade kills his mum and then goes to fight the vampire crew, and this whole bit is awesome. From the moment Blade kills Quinn and takes his sunglasses back, the music starts, it's just epic. And when Blade pulls a sword out the wall, so damn cool. And finally, Blade fights the big boss Frost, except it's not Frost because Frost is now Lamagra, which means he can regenerate a whole lot quicker, so Blade's got to try something different. He gets a hold of the explosive thingies that Karen made in the lab and uses them to stop Deacon Frost from trying to ice skate uphill. The film ends with Blaze telling Karen to make a better serum and then going to Russia to catch a vampire at a bad time. Now, before I get into my final thoughts, if you liked this movie, check out these movies. They all involve monster hunters, and really the only one worth watching is The Lost Boys. I only picked the other two for the sake of picking 3 films. They're okay, but The Lost Boys is a classic that everyone needs in their life. So let's talk about Blaze. 22 years later, I still enjoyed watching it. Of course, the special effects look awful by now, that's a given, but I think the story is still relevant. If you imagine Deacon Frost to be a representative of someone who feels the world owes him, he has this high level of entitlement, he disregards traditions without considering how his actions affect the community. But when you consider how Frost seems to operate with impunity, perhaps this is learned behavior. The only one to confront him in any real way was Dragonetti, and he was the first to be killed. I think Deacon Frost is a metaphor for privilege, and in part a slave owner. Blade is who he is as a direct result of Frost's abuse of a black woman. So Blade craves blood, but can pass as human, which brings up an identity issue. Blaze can't fully identify with vampires or people, but hates his vampire side because he recognizes it's there through a forced interaction. But Blade now has powers beyond the regular man, and that brings its own privilege. The difference between Blade and Frost is how they use the privileges they're afforded. Frost uses his for his desire to become a vampire god, whereas Blade tries to help people without seeking any recognition, praise, or any kind of reward. Although he does rob people, so, you know, there is that. In the end, I think Blade is referencing a lot of different things, but the theme of identity and belonging, attempting to navigate 2 worlds where neither of those worlds fully accepts you, is something I think a lot of people can relate to. One side might see you as a freak, the other side might see you as exotic, but how many are seeing you for you. And that is what I think of blades. What do you think? That's not a knife? Or this is a knife? Let me know down below, and while you're there, be sure to like, subscribe, and drop a suggestion if you don't mind.